Singularity by William Sleator, 17. It was not like the time I had run out and found myself for a few seconds in a frozen world. This time I let the seconds elapse as I slowly crossed the threshold to minimize the shock of transition on my body, and so I stepped out into a world that was already alive. But it was still a shock. Too many things happened at once. I clamped my hands over my ears, nearly deafened by the roar of the faint breeze, the thundering of the shallow little river, the wild shrieking of the drowsy insects. The reek of freshly mown grass hit me. The warm, living air brushed across my bare skin. My knees gave way, and I toppled forward. I could feel each individual blade of grass and the stored heat of the sun in the earth. I rolled over. My face was a foot away from the calculator. It was racing madly, dementedly. It was already past 2:08, and the hours, which had suddenly become seconds, were disappearing so fast I could hardly see them. I had only until 2:21. I scrambled to my feet. I set the flashlight down on the threshold. I could see well enough without it. I still had the keys in my left hand. With my right hand, I picked up the calculator. Then I ran past the sundial, out of the circle of pines, and into the very center of the meadow. It was a clear night. The millions of stars trembled and were blurred by tears as it dawned on me that they were not painted on a 7-foot-high ceiling. They were infinitely far away, and there was nothing between them and me. I reached toward them, feeling as though my body were growing like a magic beanstalk, stretching to fill the vast emptiness. I was swaying, turning, drunk with a sensation of endless space. A small dark shape whizzed past my head. I shrieked and then laughed. "Hey, Bat!" I cried. It was the first living creature I had encountered in a long time, and I loved it for its reckless speed and agility. From somewhere nearby came the spooky, inquisitive cry of an owl. It was talking to me. "Hi, owl!" I answered. "Happy hunting!" Then I pressed my hand to my mouth and giggled. The angular silhouette of the house was only 20 yards away. I'd better be careful or I'd wake up Barry. I turned back to the sky. The moon, which was full, drenching the meadow in silver, hung just above a distant line of trees. I couldn't tell which way it was going, but I hoped that it was rising and not setting, so that it would still be around on my next 2 holidays. That reminded me of the time. With a sick pang in my stomach, I looked at the hateful calculator clock that was always my enemy, moving too slowly when I was in the playhouse and too quickly out here. It flashed frantically, now past 2:15. I had barely 6 minutes left. Then I heard another sound, a sound so compelling in its loneliness and melancholy that again my shaky legs gave way. I cried for real now on my knees in the meadow, listening to the long drawn-out wail of the train. To hear that sound in the middle of the night had always meant isolation, as though I and the distant, disappearing engineer were the only 2 human beings awake in the world. Now I pictured the sleeping passengers curled against each other in the dim coaches, the porters playing cards in the club car, a baby crying, all rushing away from me through some far-off cornfield. The sense of isolation was multiplied, a crushing weight that pinned me to the earth, and yet at the same time it was the most achingly beautiful sound I had ever heard. "No, you can't ruin my holiday," I shouted at the train, and jumped to my feet. The calculator still gave me 5 minutes. I took off. This was my chance to move through space, to run. I mustn't waste one more precious second of it. Suddenly I knew what I wanted to do, though 5 minutes wasn't much time for it. I paused to drop the keys in the calculator under the sundial, and then headed toward the river, upstream to the left where the pool was. The pool that had seemed uninviting to me on that sunny day so long ago was now, in the fleeting vertiginous moonlight, irresistible. Through the darkness, under the trees, relishing the underbrush scratching me, the sharp stones beneath my feet, the lively, noisy river was another thing, and I hurried toward it. I splashed through the shallow water toward the smooth pool with its pale reflected cliff, a ghostly shape. The bottom dropped away. I lunged forward, and as my body went under, I kicked hard with my legs, diving for the bottom. Swimming at night had always terrified me. I would imagine the dark water swarm with invisible monsters and emerge in a panic before my hair was wet. But I was too busy now to invent any monsters. To be immersed in the tingling water was an enchantment. To stretch my arms against it, supported and buoyed by this magical substance, was like flying in a dream. My head broke the surface. I hung beneath trembling leaves, dappled by moonlight, weightless as I treaded water, and I could feel the tug of the current, like a friend pulling me by the hand, urging me to follow. My time was up, and miraculous as it was to be out here, I was not tempted to stay. Unless I went back to the playhouse at once, the last 3 months would all have been for nothing. I was committed now, but it wasn't easy. I struggled up the bank and ran for the sundial, shivering a little, and I asked myself, if the real world is this wonderful after only 3 months, what will it be like after a year? I still had that to look forward to. I set the calculator up outside the door. It read 2:21:41. I was 3 seconds late. I scooped up my allotted candy bars and cookies and dashed inside. And there I was again, under the glaring light bulb, in the bleak, stuffy little room. It seemed smaller than ever now. The walls had shrunk. Bugs and cobwebs were everywhere. Whenever I moved, I bumped into something, and I had forgotten how rank and stale the air was, like the air in a subway toilet. I would never be able to stay in here for 3 more months, or even a week. I must have dreamed I'd been here that long. I'd go crazy. Then I realized that in my excitement at being outside, I had forgotten to bring any fresh food from the house. The milk and apples and orange juice and bread and butter and cereal I had been looking forward to. Now I'd have to wait another 3 months. To compensate, I gobbled down my full quota of 2 candy bars and 8 cookies. They were the first sweets I'd eaten in 3 months, and they tasted cloying and greasy. I vomited them up 2 minutes later. But my body's rejection of its reward was not the worst part of my return to the playhouse. That came the next morning. Numbly, I began my routine, doing my best not to think about how many days were left before the next holiday. I let the sink fill up, then turned off the tap and peered gloomily into the reflection. The mouth had jumped suddenly closer. And that's the end of chapter 17.